Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, August 10th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. It's game week for the Chiefs. The preseason opener is Saturday, a home game against the Los Angeles Rams, and even after 3 weeks of training camp, the Chiefs are still a work in progress. On today's show, beat writer Pete Sweeney and Star columnists Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian tell us who they're especially interested in watching on Saturday and what they need to see from the Chiefs, who likely won't play Patrick Mahomes in this game, or any preseason game for that matter. After a break, I'll let you know what's on my radar in Kansas City sports. So for the first time since January, it is game week for the Chiefs. And speaking of January, it feels a little bit like January in here, doesn't it?
It does. Also, it feels like just as significant a game as the last one they played.
Which is to say, not significant at all. I had to look this up to remember that regular season finale turned out to be the sixth of 6 straight losses to end the season for the Chiefs. Just recalling how bad it was and how bad it had gotten, which means at one point they were 6-5, right? And looking like a playoff team, and then it all fell apart.
Am I remembering this right, Blair? Weren't they still technically alive when Mahomes was on his last series of the season trying to rally them against the Chargers? I mean, there were still 3 full games left after that, or 4? 3. Yeah, so it's funny because you tend to think it was such a dismal season that it was over, weeks before that. And theoretically, it was kind of over. You just didn't see them coming to life.
I think the big news today at camp was the return of Eric Bieniemy to the field. It was great to see EB back on the field, but Pete, you were there to see him come down the hill with a lot of hugs. And what was the reaction?
Yeah, understandably, I think there was a little bit of emotion involved, just considering the situation, right? And that continues to be the main thing. And I don't think Eric is showing back up unless the situation is in a position where it's stable, where his wife Mia continues to get better. And, with him being back in the mix, you kind of shifted to on the field. I mean, I think immediately you could tell there was already a difference with him being back in the mix. There was a very clear reason the Chiefs brought him back, and that was to have that voice, that voice of accountability, within the offense. And again, terrible situation, but it seems to have stabilized and calmed down, and at least to some extent, he can get back to focused on football.
We spoke to his impact and what we expect his impact to be at his second time around with the Chiefs. And in writing about him earlier today, I remembered that in his 5 years as the offensive coordinator here, the Chiefs went to the AFC Championship game each year, and then they tacked on a couple after that, won 2 Super Bowls, and had great offenses, especially the 2018 and the 2022 offense.
Yeah, top 6 every year in points during his time, and twice led the league in scoring. So, I mean, and then to go 15th and 21st the last 3 years is quite a contrast. One of the things I've become persuaded about, there was a part of me that thought I didn't necessarily want to see them return to that when they did decide to bring Eric back. But one of the things I've come to realize is that there is real power in how these guys perceive him and react to him and think of him, that's a pretty strong, almost tangible thing, that they feel like his voice is that significant. And look, we all have written about it in different ways over the last week or two, especially with everything from the piece you wrote, Blair, with Ken Walker making the point about we'll hold it down for you, and other guys sort of channeling him, and then of course EB himself hovering over everything through Zoom calls and live streaming and calling Patrick at night. So it's funny, there's no substitute for the real thing, but he has managed to keep himself present, it seems like, through the most awful circumstances.
And look, it's not like he's coming in to call plays, right? That's not what the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, no matter who it is. It's not their job to call the plays. But he is going to come in and oversee a running back room. DeMarco Murray, of course, and we spoke about this in previous podcasts. But the more I think about it, the more I'm really convinced that the Chiefs' running back room and the running game is such a key to what they're going to be about this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to throw the ball whenever you can't run the ball and teams just drop 7 or 8 in coverage every play and don't buy it on play action. So I continue to say, as much as their passing game didn't look like itself last year, they didn't have the easy button last year. They made it as hard as possible for themselves last year. And, one thing I'm looking at today, because, as we all watch practice, we're charting constant red zone plays, and it's incredible how bad their red zone passing offense was last year. When they dropped back to pass 32 times the red zone last year and converted 7 first downs out of it on third down. They were 7 for 32. They got sacked 6 times. They scrambled 3 times and converted 1 of those. And then they passed the ball 23 times for 6 first downs on third downs and in the red zone. And I think part of that is because there's no respect, to your point, for the running game, Blair. And I think just having a talent back there, because their offensive line's set up for it. They're set up to run the ball well, which speaks to just how poor Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt were for him last year.
When I think of their red zone offense last year, the first thing that comes to mind is the Travis Kelce bobble or deflected pass that turned into the interception. Was that Eagles?
Yeah.
Was that the play where Josh Simmons made what I thought was the play of the year for the Chiefs? Yeah. Running down. I forgot who was on the interception, but
their 2 worst plays of the year last year. I think that was Quinton Mitchell on the interception. Yeah, 2 worst plays of the year last year were in the red zone. That was their second in terms of. Factually, statistically, in terms of expected points out of their biggest swings that was number 2, and number 1 was the one at the 1-yard line that Lloyd took back in
Jacksonville, right?
Where the Chiefs absolutely obliterated the Jaguars and lost the game because of it.
Right. God, that was such a brutal play, such a brutal moment.
It was kind of the year of Murphy's Law. I mean, for so many years, it felt like they would get the bounce, they might get the call, they might get this or that. They would have better luck with injuries, and it went all haywire in 2025. And naturally, you'd think that statistics would tell you something like that isn't going to happen again. But it's 2 straight years where the 1-score games always pop up in my mind, and I think red zone is a big part of that. In 24, they won them all. In 25, they pretty much lost them all. It's probably the truth is probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So it's just how are they going to push forward through that this year.
I had this just real quick. I was going to say this is where the red zone becomes a major factor. Is what Pete just said. It is that small margin because you convert 7 out of 32. So the team that was 10th and 11th in the league converted 41%, or 41% of your 32 attempts would be you're converting 13th instead of 7. That's 6 extra times. And most red zone first down conversions are actually touchdowns.
Yeah,
because you're inside the 10 already, or it's a play that we saw Kenneth Walker catch a pass today at the 5. It's a first down, but he's going to run it in the end zone. Most of them are touchdowns. So it's 6 extra times where you're getting 7 instead of attempting 3. Harrison Butker wasn't even automatic last year, so
not early.
So even if he converts it, you're getting 7 instead of 3, 6 times. They lost 5 games by less than 4 points with Mahomes starting. And I mean, that's the difference between 6 and 8 and 8 and 6, 9 and 5, even 10 and 4.
That stat of all those third down sacks in the red zone is unbelievable. If I understand it right,
6 sacks.
6 sacks and 7 conversions, right? So I mean, that was the extreme.
Yeah. What about
Yeah, and the only other thing I want to add, it would take a little studying to do this, but I do think to Pete's point, I'm not sure how many NFL seasons have had not necessarily the 1-score games, although I think that's from 24 to 25, an unbelievable contrast, but also the number of quirky plays within that. I mean, Sam's right that the red zone thing is an indicative stat, but I do think there were so many oddities each season that happened that way. very extreme, and shows you why they were in need for a couple years now of some rehabilitation of a few systems.
As we watch Ken Walker here at training camp, I know I keep kind of flashing back to running backs of, Damian Williams, others who, we're seeing things from Ken Walker that we haven't seen Chiefs backs do in the last 3 years or so. But I'm so encouraged by what I see with him, and I've got to admit to not having paid much attention to Ken Walker when he was with the Seahawks until the playoffs and especially the Super Bowl. But I was struck also by Patrick Mahomes' response to the question. Not a question about the offense. What's the difference? And he just said number 9. Am I getting my hopes too high for this?
I mean, he looks like I joked with Vahe, the former college Hall of Famer that we have here, of a football player.
Still in the Hall of Fame.
If he was in the backfield, we'd notice the difference between the Chiefs deployed last year. But I think the biggest thing he knows with Kenneth Walker is his change of direction doesn't require him to halt all of his momentum and get restarted again. He changes direction almost at the same pace in which he runs. But you're right, Blair. I think what stood out is he's been really involved in the passing game. And Brashard Smith led their backfield last year with 172 receiving yards. And of course, they're 21st in scoring. The year before, Samaje Perine, it leads them in receiving 320 yards. They're 15th in points. The year before, it's Pacheco with 244 yards. They're 15th in points. Have to go all the way back to 2022 when Jerick McKinnon was a factor. 512 yards, the Chiefs lead the NFL in scoring. Year before, Darrell Williams has 460 yards. The Chiefs are 4th in scoring. When they score, the running back is a major reason why. And it's just been completely absent for their offense for 3 straight years.
This is the best back they've had since Kareem Hunt came out of school, and maybe Jamal Charles. I mean, I think that to me is almost like a floor. Kareem Hunt in 17, 18, where the ceiling could even be higher than that. Watching him, and I wonder how much we'll see of him during the preseason, but just watching him at practice, it actually makes me surprised that Seattle wanted to split the backfield as much as they did. Right? They had Zach Charbonnet and were giving him a lot of opportunities. And not to say that I think Charbonnet is a bad player, but I feel like what was left on the table by not making Kenneth Walker a bell cow. And look, the bell cow with the Chiefs offense is going to look different than a bell cow in other offenses because they're naturally going to want to throw the ball a little bit more than I think other places. But still, I think giving him that role, having him only come off the field when he needs a blow and saying you're going to be our guy, I just think it's going to change the game for the Chiefs. And I've said this on the radio, and I'll share it here too. I think the biggest thing that I've heard that's kind of perked my ears up in surprise has been, it seems like fans and analysts and everyone seems to be worried about the offense. I'm less worried about the offense and more concerned about what we've seen defensively. This is such turnover. There's a lot of youth. Chris Jones is another year older. You haven't really seen who's going to be opposite George Karlaftis for production as defensive end. We think it'll be Gelati. We think it's going to be easy to replace Leo Chanel. We think it's all going to be great, that Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson have moved on. And we're kind of just assuming that the defense is going to be okay because it always ends up okay. So I don't know. That's been backward to me. I feel a lot more confident about the Chiefs offense rebounding than the defense just continuing to be good.
Go ahead, Blair.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, with Ken Walker, we've got a player who's going to replace Isaiah Pacheco, as the sort of the bell cow running back for the Chiefs. And we always talked about how Pacheco ran angry, seemed to run angry. Well, so far in training camp, we've seen Kenneth Walker just angry.
Yeah.
With a couple of incidents. What are we to make of his temperament?
Well, what do you think about Pacheco? It seemed like he ran with certain blind anger where he just ran straight at you.
And not to pile on, but as of this morning, we're recording, what is today, Monday afternoon. This morning he had an MCL sprain. He's already in Detroit because of that run stop.
It is interesting, though. We were joking a little bit about this, the form tackling that Ken Walker had the other day on Gilman after their little dust up on the sideline. What's funny is he's such an understated guy to talk to, but he's got a little burn going out there, doesn't he? And I think that's an interesting component of him. Maybe this is related, maybe it's not, Blair, but the thing I was thinking about is as you went through that list, Sam, of the receivers who've led the team over the last few years, very few of them are the guy that's out there every down, right? And that's what's going to be an interesting question about Ken Walker. I mean, you don't have to look at him as situational. You might have to look at him as needing a breather. But I think that's more the question, and we really haven't seen that since early Kareem Hunt and, of course, the Jamal Charles days.
Okay, let's take a break. We're back on SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR, with beat writer Pete Sweeney and columnists Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian. Chiefs play their first preseason game on Saturday, 3 p.m. at Arrowhead Stadium. Where would you rather be than Kansas City on an August afternoon?
For watching Justin Fields hurl the rock.
I'll tell you one place, I'd rather be a GHA field at Arrowhead Stadium, right?
You will not be at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium.
Again.
No.
Isn't that nice to have that conundrum gone now, where we no longer have to fiddle with the question of, do we need a first reference? What's our obligation? Some of us handle that different ways than others.
Yeah.
As Chris Jones would say.
That's right. And Andy, what was Andy Reid's? He was
GH.
Never could get the A.
But always got the prompt, but never could get the A.
Let's pick up on something Keith brought up in the first segment, and that is a little concern with the defense. Do we share Pete's concern here with this a little bit more worried about the defensive side, the offensive side?
Are we looking at 6 new starters, 5 new starters?
No, technically Derek Nadi started 11 games last year, believe it or not. So they're replacing 6 guys who started at least 11 games.
So just think about that, I guess, as a starting point. I mean, that certainly suggests some flux and some dependence on younger guys, right, to begin with.
And one of the guys they're depending on right now is Mansour Delaney, and we still haven't seen him with pads.
Today he was wearing pads, but still in that yellow non-contact jersey. And I don't know where you guys are. I think it's a concern that Mansour Delaney, we're 2 weeks into camp, still hasn't practiced. Steve Spagnuolo basically acknowledged last week when I asked him that he's behind, and how couldn't he be behind? And I mean, when Pete and I were up here at rookie camp, when nobody was in pads, was complete non-contact, he and I are looking at each other like, you noticing Mansour Delaney's getting beat quite a bit? And, it was the conversation, that, among those of us in the tent is that he didn't look. Now, I mean, Andy Reid has said that he's basically playing one-handed because it's a shoulder injury that's prompting him to be in the non-contact. But, man, I think he's got to get out there sooner rather than later if he wants to be week 1 ready.
Yeah, I mean, a different situation entirely, but Christian Fulton last year was just injured throughout training camp and really could never get kick-started and wasn't even a player that Spags wanted to play until really toward late at the end of the year. And so that, of course, won't be the case with your number 6 overall pick. He's going to play, but I just think, this lingering shoulder thing, it's costing him, I think, some key reps. And the company line right now seems to be playing with one arm because of the arm. The conditioning hasn't been there. And once he's through that, he'll be fine. But it's like, well, it's August 10th, and pretty soon it'll be August 17th, and then the 24th. And then it's like, is he going to be out of this yellow non-contact jersey? Once he is it going to look better than it has? I mean, I don't know if that's a given either. So, just some general concerns, especially just considering the draft capital you've put into this player.
When Trent McDuffie was a rookie, he got hurt in the first game and then missed half, maybe it was more than half the season, but it was quite a while.
5 or 6.
Okay, but a nice chunk of the season. But he at least had OTAs and training camp, and he was ready to go when the season started. Delaney doesn't have any, hardly any of that. That's what the concerning bit is to me. Is he just he has not been able.
There's no foundation.
Right.
There's no foundation for him to fall back on whenever he does get healthy. He's going to be starting from ground zero.
Right. And so he was part of a story that we all contributed to that appeared in the Star on, well, online on Sunday, so it'll be in the print edition, I think, a week from now. Kidding.
Because of all the extra stuff we've written.
Right. Position battles. In cornerback 2, Noah Williams, Mansour Delane, and L'Jarius Sneed were the candidates.
Oh, that was mine, wasn't it?
I believe that was yours.
I'm glad that's the one that stood out of the 4.
But Noah Williams, I think, has had a good camp.
Yeah, I think Noah Williams has been good. I think he's one of the starters, but the other 2 guys that you would pick are guys who haven't participated in a single contact drill out here, which is Mansour Delane, and L'Jarius Sneed is at least lining up.
Yeah, he hasn't been the guest choice.
In the past couple of days. He hasn't even been at practice at all. He's been off to the side doing work. So, to Pete's point about the defense, I do think they've gotten better up front. But you lost Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson, who are making $175 million, like good players. And so far, the replacement has been hope that Noah Williams improves. And who? Because Melvin Smith right now is taking all the first-team reps, basically. Christian Fulton has been bad and then hurt and then bad. And I don't know what they have at cornerback. And I guarantee you, Stu Spagnuolo, a guy who, when they have plenty at cornerback, thinks that they might be needing help at cornerback, it's got to be his biggest worry right now as we sit here in mid-August.
Well, you're right about the defensive line, Noah. That has been pretty impressive here, and so such an upgrade. We talked about the running backs earlier. What an upgrade at that position. I think the interior defensive line upgrade is ranks second in terms of position upgrades for the Chiefs going into this season with Khyiris Tonga and especially Peter Woods. That guy's been really impressive.
And just as far as this defensive back point, I mean, we are concerned. We do think there are going to be growing pains. In a lot of these, even championship seasons for Spagnuolo, it seemed like the defense would struggle early in the year before settling in a little bit.
5, 6, 7 games a few times.
You know what helps with that is, and this kind of is a Spagnuolo signature too, is a front that gets to the quarterback quickly. And yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing some of that here. Tougher in training camp because everyone's got a yellow jersey, so you're not really sure if they're getting home or not. But I mean, you could see the push. Sam and I have commented to each other watching 101s that Tonga, it seems to be the only guy we've ever seen capable of pushing Creed Humphrey anywhere. So you have that, and I think that's going to really shore up the run. But as these defensive backs are getting their reps and getting their wind and feet under them, you know, that front being able to get to the quarterback or at least pressure the quarterback should theoretically alleviate maybe some of the miscues, the mistakes, the getting beat that might happen for these young guys early.
What is it about Khyiris Tonga that has kept him from staying planted with the team to now? I mean, he looks like a stalwart sort, but is this his 5th team?
The Chiefs are the first team to give him a multi-year contract. Yeah, and that was a big storyline when he signed. He just was so grateful that finally someone believed in him enough to go and do it.
I think Tonga and Peter Woods are going to help Chris Jones and George Karlaftis. So my question is, what kind of year is Felix Uzama in store for? Is there potential for improvement here with him? He looks physically better, and of course he feels as best he spells as an NFL player.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to play because when you look at the depth chart at edge rusher, you've got George Karlaftis, Ashton Gelati, I think will be your starters. R. Mason Thomas will certainly rotate in, but like if you're looking at potentially cutting Felix Anudike, for who? Right. I don't know who the 4th guy. I mean, I think Tyreek Smith has been okay up here and has been more impressive than they probably would have thought. But
Ethan Downs could have been.
Yeah, Ethan, because he plays special. So, I mean, I think that's a big